The rain wasn't just falling. It was screaming against the glass. I was sitting on my couch, the fabric rough against my skin, holding a warm mug of tea that had long since gone cold. Then the sound happened. Not a knock. A thud. Like something heavy hitting the wood of my front door. I looked at my hands. They were calloused, scarred at the knuckles, the hands of someone who spent 8 hours a day hitting sandbags and throwing grown men across a mat. But in that moment those hands were shaking. I opened the door and the world stopped. There she was. My twin sister Maya. The girl who shared my face but never my strength. She was shivering, her clothes soaked through, sticking to her skin like a second layer of grief. But it wasn't the water that made my stomach drop. It was the purple-black shadow swallowing her left eye. It was the way she held her arm, tucked tight against her ribs like she was trying to keep her soul from spilling out. She didn't say a word. She just looked at me, her lips trembling, and collapsed into my arms. And in that second, the sister who fought for titles and trophies died. The sister who fought for blood was born. But before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you from and how old are you? I'm so excited to see who's with me today. Happy listening. I pulled Maya inside, the smell of wet pavement and copper blood filling my small hallway. The air in my apartment always felt safe, filled with the scent of lavender candles and old gym leather, but now it felt suffocating. Maya, I whispered. My voice sounded like gravel. Maya, look at me. She couldn't. She just kept staring at the floor, her wet hair dripping onto my hardwood. Drip. 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 The sound was like a clock ticking toward something explosive. I led her to the bathroom. I moved like I was walking on eggshells, afraid that if I moved too fast, she might shatter into a million pieces. I sat her down on the edge of the tub. The porcelain was cold, and I watched her flinch at the touch of it. I grabbed a white washcloth. It was so clean, so bright. I knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. I started to dab at her forehead. She winced, a tiny broken sound escaping her throat. I'm sorry, I breathed. I'm so sorry, Maya. Who did this? I knew the answer. We both knew the answer. David. The man with the perfect smile and the expensive suits. The man who everyone thought was a saint. I remembered their wedding day 3 years ago. I remembered the way he held her waist, too tight even then. I had felt a chill in my bones back then, but I told myself I was just being a protective sister. I told myself I was crazy. I wasn't crazy. I was right. I peeled back her soaked denim jacket. My breath caught in my throat. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Her arms were covered in finger-shaped bruises. They were everywhere, yellow, green, and a deep angry red. How long? I thought. How long has he been turning my sister into a graveyard of his anger? He lost his keys, Maya finally spoke. Her voice was a ghost of what it used to be. It was thin and cracked. He couldn't find them. He said I hid them to make him late for his meeting. I told him I didn't see them. I looked everywhere, Sarah. I swear I looked everywhere. She started to sob then. Not a loud cry, but a quiet, rhythmic shaking of her shoulders. He grabbed me by the hair, she whispered, staring at her own hands in her lap. He dragged me to the kitchen. He kept asking where they were. When I said I didn't know, he didn't stop. He didn't stop until he found them in his own coat pocket. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the washcloth. I felt a heat rising from my chest, up my neck, into my face. It was the same heat I felt right before a fight started. The red zone. My trainers always told me to control it, to use it as fuel. But right now it felt like it was going to burn me alive. Maya and I were identical in face, but that was where it ended. Growing up, she was the one who liked poetry and baking. She was soft. She saw the good in everyone, even when there was no good to be found. I was the fighter. I joined the MMA gym when I was 12 because I liked the way it felt to be in control of my own body. I liked knowing that if someone put their hands on me, I could make them regret it. I had spent my life building a cage around my heart, making myself hard, fast, and dangerous. Looking at her now, I felt a wave of guilt so heavy I thought I might drown. I was the strong one. I was the professional. And while I was winning matches and getting my hand raised in the air, my twin sister was being broken in a house only 20 minutes away. You're staying here, I said, my voice firm. You're never going back there. We'll call the police. We'll get your things tomorrow with a guard. It's over, Maya. Maya looked up at me then, her one good eye wide with terror. No, Sarah, you don't understand. He has people. He has cameras. He told me if I ever left, if I ever told anyone, he'd find you. He said he'd break your hand so you could never fight again. He knows how much you love it. She grabbed my sleeve, her fingers trembling. He's coming for me. He's going to be at the house tonight, waiting. If I'm not there when he gets back from his apology dinner with his clients, he'll come here. He'll hurt you too. I looked at her. Really looked at her. We were the same height. Same hair color. If I covered her bruises with makeup, if I wore her floral dress and put on that fake, perfect wife smile, a dark, cold thought began to grow in the back of my mind. It wasn't a thought, it was a plan. It was a wicked, beautiful plan. David didn't know me. He had only met me twice briefly, at large family gatherings where I wore a dress and kept my mouth shut for Maya's sake. He saw me as just another version of her. A weak girl. He had no idea I could snap a person's arm in 3 different places before they could even scream. He had no idea I had spent the last 10 years learning exactly how to destroy a man's ego and his body. He's coming home tonight? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Maya nodded, her eyes leaking tears. At midnight. He always comes home at midnight after he drinks. He'll be angry. He's always angry when he drinks. I looked at the clock on the bathroom wall. 10:30 p.m. Give me your clothes, I said. Maya blinked, confused. What? Sarah, what are you doing? I'm going home, Maya, I said, a slow, predatory smile creeping onto my face. But I'm not going as myself. I'm going as you. We spent the next hour in a blur of movement. I put on her silk blouse. It felt disgusting against my skin, too light, too flimsy. I put on her wedding ring. Felt like a shackle. I used my high-end stage makeup to cover her bruises, and then I used that same makeup to create fake bruises on my own face, mirroring hers exactly. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see Sarah the fighter. I saw Maya the victim. Stay here, I told her. Lock the door. Don't answer for anyone but me. I have my gym bag in the trunk of the car. If things go wrong, well, they won't go wrong for me. I walked out into the rain. The cold air hit my face, but I didn't shiver. I felt like a machine. I got into her car, the car he bought her, the car that probably had a tracker on it. I drove to their neighborhood. It was one of those places where the grass is perfectly cut and every house looks like a palace. It was a place where screams were hidden behind thick walls and expensive curtains. I pulled into the driveway of the large, dark house. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was the rhythm of a hunter. I walked to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. The house was silent. It smelled like expensive floor wax and stale air. I sat down on the designer sofa in the living room, leaving the lights off. I waited. Minutes turned into an hour. Then I heard it. The sound of a heavy car pulling into the gravel driveway. The roar of a powerful engine being shut off. Thud. A car door slammed. Heavy, stumbling footsteps walked up the porch. A key fumbled in the lock. The door swung open, hitting the wall with a loud bang. Maya! A man's voice roared, thick with alcohol and rage. Where are you? I know you're hiding, you little brat. Get out here and take my coat. I didn't move. I stayed in the shadows, my hands tucked into the pockets of the silk robe, my fingers curling into tight, hard fists. The lights flicked on, blindingly bright. David stood there, his tie loosened, his face flushed red. He spotted me on the couch. There you are, he sneered, walking toward me. He reached back, his hand forming a fist, his eyes full of a dark, twisted joy. I didn't finish what we started earlier. He swung, but I didn't flinch. I didn't scream, and I certainly didn't fall. As his fist came flying toward my face, I moved. It was a blur of motion he never saw coming. I caught his wrist in midair, the bones creaking under my grip. I looked him dead in the eyes, a cold, terrifying smile on my face. Wrong sister, David. The look on David's face was something I'll never forget. It was a mix of confusion and pure, ugly shock. He tried to pull his arm back, but I didn't let go. I squeezed his wrist tighter, feeling the pulse jumping under his skin. He was strong, sure, but he was sloppy. He was used to hitting someone who didn't hit back. He was used to bones that yielded. Mine didn't. What? What are you doing? He stammered. His breath smelled like expensive scotch and sour regret. Maya, let go of me. You're hurting me. I laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. It was the sound of a predator watching its prey realize the cage door just locked. I didn't say anything. I just stood up slowly, never breaking eye contact. I was a few inches shorter than him, but in that moment I felt like a giant. I let go of his wrist with a sharp flick, sending him stumbling back against the wall. He hit a framed photo of their wedding, the one where they both looked so happy, and it rattled against the paint. You're drunk, David, I said, my voice low and steady. I had to keep the Maya mask on just enough. If I went full fighter too soon, he might run. And I didn't want him to run. Not yet. Go to bed. We'll talk in the morning. He straightened his tie, trying to regain his big man energy. He let out a dry, nasty chuckle. Talk? We don't talk, Maya. You listen. That's how this works. I don't know what's gotten into you tonight, but you better fix that tone before I fix it for you. He stepped toward me again, his hand raised. I didn't move. I just watched his shoulder. That's what they teach you in the ring. Don't watch the eyes, watch the shoulders. They tell you where the punch is coming from before the brain even knows. But then the front door creaked open again. David? Is everything okay in here? I heard a bang. A woman stepped into the foyer. She was older, maybe in her 50s, wearing a sharp gray suit and holding a leather briefcase. This was Diane, David's mother. I remembered her from the few times Maya had mentioned her. She lived in the guest house on the property. She was the woman who had raised a monster and spent every day pretending he was a prince. David froze. He instantly shifted. The rage in his eyes vanished, replaced by that fake, oily charm. Everything is fine, Mom. Maya just had a little accident. She's a bit clumsy tonight. Diane looked at me. Her eyes were like cold pebbles. She didn't look at the fake bruises I had painted on my face with sympathy. She looked at them with disgust, like I was a piece of furniture that had been stained. Try to be more careful, Maya, Diane said, her voice clipping every word. David has a big gala next week. We can't have you looking like that. It reflects poorly on the family name. Go upstairs and put some ice on it. And try to have tea ready for David. He's had a long night. She didn't even wait for an answer. She just turned around and walked back out into the rain toward the guest house. She knew. She had to know. But to her, Maya wasn't a person. She was a trophy that was starting to get dented, and she was annoyed by the maintenance. Internal monologue screamed inside my head. I want to follow her. I want to tell her exactly what her son is. But no. One monster at a time. David looked back at me, a smug grin on his face. You heard her. Go upstairs. I'm going to have one more drink and then I'm coming up. Be ready. I turned and walked up the stairs. My heart was thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. Every step felt heavy. The house was so big, but it felt like a tomb. I walked into their bedroom. It was massive, decorated in whites and creams. It looked like a magazine cover. But the air felt thin, like there wasn't enough oxygen to breathe. I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed. The silk sheets felt slippery and cold. I looked around the room. On the nightstand there was a small bottle of pills, anxiety medication. Maya's name was on the label. Next to it was a book of poetry, the pages dog-eared and worn. I picked up the book. A small note fell out. It was in Maya's handwriting. It said, just hold on. One more day. Just one more day. A tear pricked my eye and I wiped it away angrily. I wasn't here to cry. I was here to be the wall he finally crashed into. I went into the walk-in closet. It was bigger than my entire kitchen. Rows and rows of expensive dresses, shoes that cost more than my car, and bags that had never been used. This was the golden cage everyone talked about. David bought her things to keep her quiet. He bought her diamonds to hide the marks he left on her skin. I found a pair of Maya's leggings and a loose sweatshirt. I changed out of the dress. I needed to be able to move. I reached into the back of the closet, tucked under a pile of winter blankets, and found what I was looking for. Earlier that day, before I left my apartment, I had hidden a small black gym bag in the trunk of Maya's car. When I arrived, I had slipped it under my arm while walking in. Now I pulled out my hand wraps. Wrapping your hands is a ritual. It's the moment you stop being a human and start being a weapon. Over the wrist. Between the fingers. Across the knuckles. I felt the familiar tension of the cloth tightening around my skin. Felt like home. Felt like safety. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from the moon hitting the rain on the window. I practiced my breathing. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. They were heavy, uneven. He was leaning on the railing. He was talking to himself, mumbling about a deal he closed or a person he hated. He reached the door. He didn't knock. He never knocked. He kicked it open. The light from the hallway spilled in, casting a long, distorted shadow of him across the white carpet. He didn't see me at first. I was sitting in the armchair in the corner, shrouded in darkness. Maya? Why are the lights off? He barked. He sounded even drunker now. He stumbled toward the bed, tossing his jacket on the floor. Get over here. My neck is killing me. Give me a rub. I didn't move. Maya, did you hear me? He turned toward the corner. He squinted, trying to make out my shape. I stood up slowly. The hand wraps were hidden in the shadows, but I could feel the power in them. I'm not doing that, David, I said. My voice wasn't the soft, shaky whisper of Maya anymore. It was cold. It was the voice I used when I was staring down an opponent in the cage. David paused. He tilted his head, like a dog trying to understand a new sound. What did you say to me? I said no, I repeated. I stepped forward into the light. He saw the leggings. He saw the sweatshirt. He saw the way I was standing, feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced, chin down. He didn't understand what he was seeing, but his lizard brain knew something had changed. You're wearing those rags again, he hissed, his face twisting. I told you to throw those away. You look like a peasant. You look like your loser sister. He walked toward me, his hand reaching out to grab my hair. This was his favorite move. Gave him control. It made the other person feel small. I let him get close. I let his fingers almost touch my scalp. Then I moved. I didn't strike him. Not yet. I just slipped to the side, a simple pivot of my lead foot. He lunged at empty air and stumbled forward, nearly tripping over the armchair. You missed, I said. David spun around, his face turning a deep, bruised purple. The alcohol was fueling his rage now. He wasn't just annoyed. He was livid. He had never missed. Maya never moved. You think this is a game? He screamed. He lunged again, this time swinging a wide, heavy right hook. It was a barroom punch, slow, telegraphed, and messy. I ducked under it so easily it almost felt like cheating. As I came up, I planted my palm into his chest. Just a nudge, really. But it was enough to send him flying back onto the bed. He sat there, gasping for air, looking at me like I had just grown a second head. Who? What is wrong with you? He panted. Nothing is wrong with me, David, I said, stepping closer. I held up my wrapped hands so he could see them in the light. In fact, for the first time in a long time, everything is exactly right. I saw the moment the fear finally started to trickle into his eyes. He looked at my hands. He looked at the way I moved. He looked at the fake bruises on my face, and then he looked at my eyes, eyes that weren't crying, eyes that were hungry. You're not Maya, he whispered, the color draining from his face. I leaned down, my face just inches from his. I could smell the expensive scotch and the cheap soul. I'm the person you should have been afraid of, I whispered back. Suddenly, the house phone on the nightstand started to ring. It was a sharp, piercing sound that broke the tension like a gunshot. David glanced at it. His eyes lit up. He thought it was his escape. He scrambled for the phone, but I was faster. I swiped it off the hook and listened. David. It was Diane's voice. She sounded panicked. David, pick up. There's someone at the gate. A man. He says he's from the police and he's asking about Maya. He says someone reported a disturbance. Do not let him in. I'll handle it. I looked at David. He looked at the phone. Then we both heard the sound of the front door being kicked open downstairs. But it wasn't the police. It was the sound of heavy boots. Lots of them. And then a voice I didn't recognize shouted. Where is he? Where is the man who thinks he can touch one of ours? David's face went from pale to ghostly white. Who is that? I realized then that Maya hadn't told me everything. There was someone else coming. Someone who didn't care about the rules. The sound of the front door splintering downstairs echoed through the house like a thunderclap. David scrambled backward on the bed, his expensive silk sheets bunching up under his trembling legs. He looked like a cornered rat, his eyes darting from the bedroom door to me, then back again. "Who did you call?" he hissed, his voice cracking. "Maya, what did you do?" I didn't answer him. I was too busy listening to the footsteps. These weren't the measured, calm steps of police officers. These were fast, heavy and angry. My heart was thumping, but my mind was clicking into gear. I knew that rhythm. Those were the steps of people coming for a fight. "I didn't call anyone, David," I said, my voice as cold as the rain outside. "Maybe your past is finally catching up with you." I walked toward the bedroom door, but before I could reach the handle, it swung open. 3 men stood there. They weren't wearing uniforms. They were wearing dark hoodies and leather jackets, their faces partially hidden by the shadows of the hallway. The man in the front was huge, thick neck, scarred eyebrows, and hands that looked like they were made of stone. I recognized him instantly. It was the Hammer. His real name was Jax, and he was a debt collector for some of the shadiest underground gyms in the city. He wasn't a professional fighter like me. He was a street brawler who got paid to break things. And right now he was looking at David with a hunger that made my stomach turn. "David Miller," Jax said, his voice a low growl. "You thought you could just ignore the boss? You thought you could bet $500,000 on a fixed fight, and then disappear when the fix didn't happen?" David's face went a strange shade of gray. He looked like he was about to be sick. "Jax, listen. I have the money. I just need more time. My investments, they're tied up." "Time's up," Jax said. He stepped into the room, and the 2 men behind him followed, shutting the door behind them. The room suddenly felt very small. Then Jax noticed me. He looked me up and down, seeing the fake bruises on my face and the baggy sweatshirt. He sneered. "And who's this?" "The little wife. I heard you like to use her as a punching bag, Dave. That's real brave of you." He laughed, a dry, nasty sound. "Well, tonight we're going to see how you like being on the other side of that. Boys, grab him." The 2 men moved toward the bed. David let out a pathetic yelp and tried to crawl toward the window, but they were too fast. They grabbed him by the arms and hauled him to his feet. David was sobbing now, the big man act completely gone. He was begging, snot running down his nose, promising them anything and everything. "Please, don't. My mother, she has money. Take the house. Just don't hurt me." Jax ignored him. He turned his attention back to me. "As for you, sweetheart, you've seen too much. You should have run when you had the chance. But don't worry. We'll make it quick." He reached out a massive hand to grab my throat. Mistake. I didn't even think. It was pure muscle memory. I stepped inside his reach, my hand wraps feeling like armor. I grabbed his wrist with my left hand and delivered a lightning-fast palm strike to his chin. His head snapped back, his teeth clicking together with a sickening sound. He stumbled back, his eyes glazing over for a split second. The room went dead silent. Even David stopped sobbing. Jax touched his jaw, his eyes narrowing. He looked at me, really looked at me this time. He saw the way I was balanced on the balls of my feet. He saw the hand wraps peeking out from my sleeves. "You're not the wife," Jax whispered, his voice turning dangerous. "The wife is a mouse. You're a cat. I'm the one who's going to put you in the hospital if you don't leave this house right now," I said. Jax grinned, showing a gold tooth. "I've always wanted to see if those cage fighters were as tough as they look on TV. Change of plans, boys. Hold the husband. Let him watch while I show his wife how we do things on the street." He pulled a heavy, silver set of brass knuckles out of his pocket and slipped them over his fingers. My blood went cold. One hit from those would shatter my skull. I looked at David. He was watching us, a weird, sick hope in his eyes. He actually wanted us to fight. He wanted anyone to get hurt so he could find a way to run. But then the bedroom door was kicked open again. This time it was Diane. She was holding a small, sleek handgun, her face a mask of pure, cold fury. She didn't point it at Jax. She pointed it at me. "Diane, put the gun down," I shouted. "You ruin everything." Diane screamed. Her voice was high and brittle. "I knew you weren't Maya. I knew the moment I saw you in the hall. My son might be a monster, but he's my monster. And I won't let some street-fighting brat destroy our lives. Mom, help me! David yelled. Shut up, David. Diane snapped, never taking her eyes off me. She looked at Jax. If you want your money, you'll take care of this girl first. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure she never speaks again. If you do that, I'll sign over the deed to the guest house tonight. Jax looked at the gun, then at me, then at the promise of a big payday. He tightened his grip on the brass knuckles. Deal. I was trapped. I had a 250-pound brawler in front of me with metal on his fists, 2 more thugs behind him holding David, and a crazy woman with a gun at the door. My internal monologue was a frantic loop. Think, Sarah. Think. You've been in worse spots. No, you haven't. This isn't a sport. This is life or death. I slowly raised my hands. Diane, you don't want to do this. The police are on their way. My gym. They know where I am. Let them come, Diane said, her finger tightening on the trigger. By the time they get here, we'll tell them these men broke in and killed you, and David and I were the lucky survivors. Jax took a step forward, his shadow looming over me. He swung a massive overhead right. I dived to the floor, rolling across the white carpet, feeling the wind of his punch whistle over my head. I scrambled to my feet near the nightstand. My hand hit the small bottle of Maya's pills. I didn't think. I grabbed the heavy glass lamp next to it and smashed it against the wall, leaving me with a jagged, sharp base. Come on then. I yelled, the adrenaline finally washing away the fear. Jax roared and lunged. But just as he did, the sound of a window shattering exploded from the other side of the room. A figure dressed in all black, wearing a motorcycle helmet, swung through the glass on a rope. They hit the floor in a perfect tuck and roll. Before anyone could react, the figure stood up and threw a small, round object into the center of the room. Fizzing. Thick white smoke began to billow out, filling the room in seconds. I couldn't see my own hands. I heard coughing, cursing, and the sound of Diane screaming. Where is she? Find her. Jax's voice boomed through the fog. I felt a hand grab my arm. I gasped and pulled back, ready to strike, but a familiar voice whispered in my ear. Sarah, it's me. We have to go. Now. It was Maya. But her voice wasn't weak. It was steady. It was brave. I grabbed her hand, and we started to move through the smoke. But as we reached the door, a loud bang echoed through the room. A muzzle flash lit up the smoke for a tiny fraction of a second. I felt a searing white-hot pain bloom in my shoulder. I stumbled, my knees hitting the floor. Sarah! Maya cried out. Through the thinning smoke, I saw a shadow standing over us. It wasn't Jax. It wasn't Diane. It was David. He had the gun in his hand and he was smiling. The most terrifying, hollow smile I had ever seen. You should have stayed in the ring, sister-in-law, he whispered. He raised the gun again, pointing it right between my eyes. The smoke was stinging my eyes, and my shoulder felt like someone had pressed a hot iron against my skin. I looked up at David. In the flickering light of the hallway, he didn't look like the successful businessman anymore. He looked like a monster who had finally lost his mask. He held the gun with a shaky hand, but the barrel was aimed straight at my head. You thought you were so smart, David hissed. He was breathing fast, his eyes wide and bloodshot. You thought you could come into my house and play hero. But look at you now, bleeding on my floor just like your sister. Beside me, Maya let out a choked sob. She was still wearing the motorcycle helmet, but I could hear her heart breaking through the visor. David, please, she cried out. Don't do this. Just let her go. Shut up. David screamed. He glanced at her, and that was the tiny window I needed. In the cage, you learn that a fight isn't over until your heart stops beating. You don't wait for a chance. You create one. I ignored the screaming pain in my shoulder. I planted my feet and drove upward with everything I had left. I didn't go for the gun. I went for his base. I tackled him around the waist, my head tucked tight against his chest. We hit the wall with a bone-jarring thud. The gun went off, a deafening crack, but the bullet went into the ceiling, showering us with plaster dust. We fell to the floor, tangling in a mess of limbs. David was frantic, clawing at my face, trying to bring the gun back down. I felt his thumb gouge near my eye, but I didn't let go. I moved like I was in training. I transitioned to his side, threw my leg over his chest and trapped his arm. It was a classic armbar. "Drop it," I roared. David grunted, trying to stack his weight on me to break the hold. He was heavy, and my injured shoulder was giving out. I could feel my grip slipping. The wetness of my own blood made it hard to stay locked on. Suddenly, a heavy shadow loomed over us. Jax, the brawler, had pushed through the smoke. He looked down at us, his brass knuckles glinting. He looked at David, then at me. "Jax, kill her," David choked out. "Do it now." Jax looked at the gun in David's hand. Then he looked at me. A woman half his size, shot and bleeding, still refusing to let go of the man who had hurt her sister. Jax had spent his life around violence, but he was a man of the streets. He lived by a code, however twisted it was. "He owes us $500,000, Jax," Diane yelled from the doorway, her voice trembling. "If she kills him, you get nothing." Jax looked at the gun again. He reached down with a hand the size of a dinner plate. But he didn't hit me. He wrapped his fingers around the barrel of the gun and twisted it out of David's hand like it was a toy. "I don't like people who use toys in a real fight," Jax grumbled. He looked at me and nodded once. A sign of respect from one fighter to another. "Finish it." With a final desperate surge of strength, I arched my hips. I felt the joint in David's elbow pop. He let out a high-pitched scream that echoed through the entire mansion. I let go, and he collapsed into a ball, sobbing and clutching his ruined arm. The room went quiet, except for the sound of the rain and David's pathetic whimpering. Maya stepped forward. She slowly took off the helmet. Her face was still pale, and the bruises I had tried to hide with makeup were still visible. But her eyes, they were different. The fear was gone. There was only a deep, quiet sadness. She walked over to David. He looked up at her, expecting a blow or maybe a kind word. He started to reach out with his good hand. "Maya, baby." She attacked me. "You saw it. Help me." Maya didn't help him. She didn't hit him either. She reached down, grabbed the wedding ring off her finger, and dropped it into the pool of spilled scotch on the floor. "My name is Maya," she said, her voice steady and clear. "And you are nothing." At that moment, the real police finally arrived. Blue and red lights danced against the rain-streaked windows. Officers flooded the room, their boots loud on the hardwood. They saw the smoke, the blood, and the broken men. They arrested Jax and his crew first. Then they went for David. As they put the handcuffs on him, Diane tried to scream that it was all my fault, but the officers ignored her. They had found the cameras David had installed to watch Maya. Cameras that had recorded the whole night. The evidence was all there. 2 weeks later, the world felt different. I was sitting on the porch of my small apartment. My arm was in a sling, and the stitches in my shoulder itched, but the air felt clean. The red zone in my head had finally cooled down. Maya came out holding 2 mugs of tea. She sat down next to me, leaning her head on my good shoulder. She looked better. The purple around her eye had faded to a light yellow. She was wearing a bright yellow sweater, a color she hadn't worn in years because David said it made her look too loud. "The lawyer called," Maya said softly. "The divorce is moving fast. He's going to prison for a long time, Sarah. Not just for what he did to me, but for the money he was hiding from his partners." "Good," I said. I looked at my hands. The wraps were off. "What are you going to do now?" Maya looked out at the street. A little girl was running on the sidewalk, laughing as she chased a butterfly. "I think I want to start a gym," Maya said. I blinked, surprised. "A gym? You hate sweating, Maya." She smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "Not a gym for fighting championships. A gym for women. Place where they can learn that they aren't weak. A place where they can find their own strength before they ever need a sister to come and save them." I felt a lump in my throat. I had spent my whole life thinking I was the strong one because I could hit hard. But looking at Maya now, I realized she was the one who was truly brave. It takes strength to throw a punch, but it takes a different kind of power to stand up after you've been knocked down for years. "I'd like to help with that," I said. We sat there in the silence, watching the sun go down. I realized then that being a fighter isn't about the titles or the trophies. It's about who you stand up for when the lights go out. The world can be a dark place. There are monsters who hide behind expensive suits and big houses. But they always forget one thing. Behind every person they try to break, there is a story. And sometimes that story has a sister who knows exactly how to fight back. I'm so happy you stayed with me until the end of this story. I'd love to know which city you're listening from, so please let me know in the comments. I truly enjoy reading them. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. It's a small gesture that means the world to me. On the screen you can see 2 stories I highly recommend. And if you haven't joined the channel yet, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next story. With love and respect, goodbye.